Hello, my name is Magnus Valmot. I'm happy to be here dialing in from Oslo, Norway, and the PLAATO HQ to this presentation I ran together with Andrew and the team at Craft Beer Professionals. Today, we will be covering a topic that I believe is interesting and hopefully relevant for many in today's economic climate when it comes to pieces of technology that can be helpful to optimize for costs and also helping to drive for efficiencies in a brewing operation. Crafting tech success stories, as we called it. Briefly on myself, Magnus Valmot, I'm the CEO of PLAATO, a privilege I've had for the last 4 years. I'm an engineer, a passionate problem solver. I like to coin myself a team builder, making sure we all go on a journey together. That's not just the employees, that is our partners and every customer that chooses to work with us and go on a journey together. Fittingly as well, love the outdoors. I was in Calgary 2 weeks back joining Unity Brew with one of our customers, had an amazing trip up in Banff National Park, so a bit of scenery there on the right. And wanted to share a bit also some experience from running implementation and improvement projects while I worked as a consultant. And starting with brief on methodology. What is important when you're considering a technology project? What's going to be important for you and your business? Taking also that as a bit of methodology, moving into more practical examples of what are we seeing around us in terms of what makes sense for our customers. But let's start digging into number one. What is important when you are considering a technology project for your brewery? First of all, anything you would like to do consider the goal and the purpose. Why are we doing this? How does this serve our business? What are the expected outcomes? There are some hard questions to be answered that we should probe into. And there's going to be a reason. Would you like to save time? Would you like to improve consistency? Would you like to increase production? Would you like to reduce energy costs? Know what that is, and it's right here. Put some numbers to it so it becomes measurable. It is also very useful to know what we call the assets, the current situation. What does this look like before we start making a change? That way, whatever you do over a period of a week, a month, or a year, you can start measuring where we able to achieve the goals that we set. Did we go from A to B? Assets to 2B. Measure it. And the pro tip that I recommend for anyone here is what I call building a business case. And most people make this to be a very large exercise. Internally at PLAATO, we try to keep it super simple. It's a one-pager. You could write this on a couple of Post-its if you wanted to, but I think it is practical to have it in a structure where anyone can fill it in, where you write the business case for, that's the title, what we'd like to do. You share some information about the background of the project. Why do we need this change? Why is it important? Why are you raising it? The action is, what are we planning to do? Are we going to increase production by getting more fermenter vessels? Are we going to set up a new control systems? Are we going to invest in a centrifuge? Whatever it is, what is the proposed action to deal with the situation you have an understanding of and have seen as a challenge? What are the risks associated with it? Could it go wrong? Will it have an impact on the work environment? How much will it cost? What is the likelihood that the project is going to fail? It's a very good question to ask for any project that we run. What is the risk of something going wrong? Are our expectations right? How do we plan to mitigate those? And of course, what we're all looking for, what are going to be the benefits of running this? So describing that, and again, putting numbers to it, that is the trick of being able to quantify, which also means when you get to the last point here, what is it going to cost? The relevant question for anyone. If you expect a gain of $5,000 in the span of 1 year period and the cost is $2,000, you have a very good business case. If the cost is $50,000 and the annual benefit is $5,000, well, could still be smart, but you'll at least know it'll take you more than 10 years to pay back, considering also the value of money and interest. So, but doing this, even if you just spend 15 minutes filling this in, it'll be a much easier story to discuss with your team members as well. And when it comes to also the critical part of, all right, we want to explore a solution, whatever that might be. How do we pick the right partners for helping solve that problem if you need externals? And we often need a technology partner, we need a material partner, whatever that might be. Firstly, some advice also from having worked in this industry, find the people with the documented and proven ROI. Do they have implementations similar to that which you are seeking to do? And can they show numbers? So when you look back in your business case, you can actually see we expected $5,000, and that is supported by these 3 stories. You build credibility and evidence for what this is. And even better, they have testimonials on their website and you know some of them, give them a call. Hear why they chose to be a reference. Hear how they've found working with this vendor or the other vendor. Do your homework, do your due diligence, and I think you'll be well set up for the project at hand. If something is a multi-year project, maybe there is some hardware and in some cases also software element. What is this going to cost over the lifetime? That's 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. Know that so that you can have your numbers accurate in the business case. Many offer money back guarantee these days. That at least shows trust that they have in the product. Ask them about that. And a question that I'd be curious to know is even asking a bit upfront, like how many people have ever claimed back the money back if that's 30, 60, 90 days? Stuff you can just be curious and probe around it. And as with anything, if you are hiring somebody, make sure it's people you'd like to work with. If you're picking a vendor as well, maybe they have 2 equal technologies. Who do you like working with? Who responds to you? Who understands your challenge? If it's people you're going to be on the phone with, might as well select people you like working with. A roadmap, sometimes that's relevant or not. If you're buying a piece of technology, especially on the software side, is the company moving in the same direction as you? Will they be interested in solving your problems, not just today, but also year after year, making sure that whatever you're buying just keeps getting better and more relevant? If they're moving in a different direction or you have that sense, means you will not be on top of their priority list when they decide what to build, what to improve, and which bugs to fix. And lastly on this one as well, if you, and probably all of us these days, have multiple solutions that we mix and match, make sure it talks together. Don't get locked in by a single vendor, which means if you pick them, you'll have to buy their solutions forever. If they have an open ecosystem, APIs that we call them, their setup and their system should be able to talk to the other. If it's sensors, if it's control systems, if it's software, make sure it works together seamlessly for you. And the tip here as well, start small, prove value, and then build from there. All right. Moving into the main part here as well, now that we've looked at how can you plan the project, understand what you're trying to achieve, and also scrutinize the bit. Who do you team up with to help solve that problem? Then making this relevant for brewers and the brewing industry. Mapped out some categories, and there's going to be many more here as well, but like business systems on the IT side, production optimization on the brewing floor and the cellar, energy management, cost relevant for all of us, the sustainability impact, and also the waste from production. All of these can be areas to address when we look for cost cutting and efficiencies. So we'll just start from the top here as well on what is symbolized here with the ERP. Now there are many more systems than just ERPs, but as a background, the ERPs grew out actually of material resource planning tools in the 1960s and evolved over decades where they added a lot more functionality, not just material resource planning. Do you have the stuff you need when you need it? but also bolting in finance, HR, and all of these different modules. So, and then you have the revolution of like cloud technologies and online technologies coming in the early 2000s. And actually, we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years quite a suite of good ERPs coming specifically made for brewers as well. So on this page, and there's probably going to be dozens of webinars of ERP vendors that are selling their services. But from our perspective, if you choose between having paper logs and digital tooling, the importance of having easy access to the data, a single source of truth, making sure that kind of you have traceability throughout the batch from the raw materials and the sourcing to the bottling at the end, and importantly, the production that we'll get to next is so much easier by having these tools in one place. So looking at smart and appropriate tooling for your business is high on the agenda, I think, for anyone looking to improve their business in this regard. Then, moving over to something that is very close to what I work with and we work with on the production optimization, where a lot of the business happens. And just as an example, a map of like an end-to-end brewery going through the brew house, the cellar, the filtration, the canning line, and you all know like there's quite heavy machinery in each step here. Where I was surprised originally was how much manual work and manual measurements had to be taken on every step to ensure consistency and tracking, much like the paper logs done back office on the ERP side. Suites of sensor technologies are becoming available at the cost range also that we believe is fitting for breweries, that allows you to automate a lot more data capture, getting this 24/7 digitally stored so that you have access to it for alerts and notifications, but also for insight and analytics. Coming to that next. And many of you will also operate your breweries with so-called PLCs that have evolved over decades, often made by the likes of Siemens, Rockwell Automation, Unitronics, Schneider. These are the backbones of modern industry, making sure that the equipment does the right thing, opening and closing the valves, keeping temperature ranges where you want to be them. And the challenge we've seen there, they're great for running scripts. They've been less great for storing data and bringing that into, on the top right side there, the MES, manufacturing execution system. How do we get insights? Where do we have leaks? Where do we have losses? Which part of the equipment has low utilization? There are so many places where a brewery can be optimized to save time and remove bottlenecks. But if you don't have the data in an appropriate place to really dig into it, it's just hard to do. And we see too few doing that analysis. And as an example, we'll buy more fermenter vessels rather than optimizing the utilization of the ones they have. We can often output 10, 20% more if the brewery wants to do that. Bottleneck detection. Where is the limit of your facility? This can be, of course, given the equipment that you currently have, with the example I just gave. Another example where we've seen many of our customers succeed is looking at a centrifuge to really get the machine running at a faster rate. And here, in terms of optimization, we've seen people being able to run with a leaner staff with higher throughput by installing. Now, granted, they're not cheap, so definitely a business case that should be made, but maybe that's something that is right for your business. And bottom right there, identify equipment issues before it fails. It's an interesting area called predictive maintenance. Is there anything you can do to see something that might fail before it actually fails? One of our customers was actually looking at deteriorating performance on the heating coils, being able to see that it started acting differently and over time gave less power. And that way was able to see and change and order new spare parts before it happened. And that's the sort of stuff that if it happens kind of mid-brew day or in the middle of the week and it's a spare part that's not easily available, could take you weeks or days of downtime that can be quite costly for a brewery. So looking at these, are you looking to produce more? Are you looking to produce more with less hours spent? Would you like to operate with a leaner team? Are you forced to do that perhaps? Or are you simply looking to keep production consistent? And if you want to keep production consistent, we would say that if you have access to the data of how something is happening time after time, it is so much easier to keep everything on track according to the batch spec and recipe. So there you will need systems to manage it, and ideally also sensor to capture the data, proving that you are on track producing your best beer every single time. Next up is energy. Now, energy prices can vary greatly in different parts of the world, but I think overall energy has become more expensive for breweries in the years that have gone by. And we see that often like 3 to 8% of a brewer's total cost is spent here. This could be through natural gas, electricity, depending on how you operate. And energy savings can be done in very advanced ways, but it can also be done surprisingly simple. Let's start with the simple on piping and insulation. And the example that I share is like if you better insulate your hot and cold water pipes, that can give a tremendous loss reduction in this part of the process. Because if you compare an uninsulated 4-inch pipe, that will lose 80% more energy than an insulated one. And also, if you better insulate your glycol system, basically you are pushing colder glycol into the tanks for better cooling effect, and you're also reducing the load on your chiller. So that there's multiple benefits to this. Another very simple step that you've probably already done in your households, if you upgrade your old light bulbs to LED bulbs, one of the easiest possible ways to just save energy. And in areas where you also run AC, you get a double benefit from avoiding the heat produced from older bulbs as well. Slightly more advanced is going to be steam capture from the brew house, where we see that heat recovery can reduce the energy for subsequent brews up to 60% because of the captured energy, which is significant. And something that also we've started looking at now, relating back to the picture on the top right side of like peak energy prices, which can be like daytime in California. If you're able to avoid the peak energy charge simply by cutting the chilling effect on your glycol cooler during those hours, you can avoid unnecessary heating and cooling during that, but rather moving that load into the nighttime where prices are low. In some regions, you even have free or negative prices. Make sure you utilize the cheap windows and avoid the expensive windows, and have a system for energy management that allows you to build what we call like energy storage, energy banks. Compared to what we do with electric vehicles in Norway, make sure you're charging the batteries when prices are low. And sustainability. It is a topic that in terms of importance goes up and down in the public and in the media, but I think it's something that should concern all of us as a shared responsibility. How do we make sure that our business operate with the least footprint possible? Do so in a smart way. One of the cool things that I believe, if you optimize the facility that you have rather than buying more equipment, more fermenters, you can actually push back investments, which can often be highly profitable, and you can get more for less with what you have. So optimize first, then expand second. In many cases, expansion would also require a new building and more real estate, which would drive its own set of costs as well, from leasing more heating, cooling, and utilities. So optimize what you have is one trick there. Another that we've been working with as well is simply utilizing the naturally occurring CO2 from the fermentation process, shown simply illustrated here on the right, rather than forced carbonation at the end. Because it is naturally produced, if you have spunding valves and you close them at the right time towards the end of your fermentation, you can naturally carbonate many of your beer styles almost without needing any external CO2. I've heard it described as the champagne method. I know the quality field is something that is being hotly discussed, but one of our customers in Iceland, RVK, recently shared with us that they're saving over $30,000 per year on CO2 by precisely timing use of the spunding valves. In the same process, they're also reducing their direct CO2 emissions. So cost savings, quality improvements, and reduced emissions. That's a win-win if I ever seen one. Heat recovery, we discussed briefly also on the last slide. Cooling losses, similarly also on better insulation, making sure you don't have those. And the point second to last there, picking your partners. It is interesting to note that about 75% of the emissions, the total emissions from a brewery, what's called scope 3, that is what is outside of your building in your facility, comes from your suppliers, all the raw materials and their whole value chains. So if you have a sustainability agenda, you just can't escape the fact that you need to work with vendors that have a serious agenda of their own. So picking manufacturers, partners with credible stories and actively working on this, that we see more and more doing, will be part of that initiative. Lastly, a bit of those numbers that I shared, those are averages, but it's called an impact analysis. And there are specialized firms doing this. You can come a long way with general rule of thumb numbers as well, but mapping out where are the biggest emission sources of your brewery, and that could be from then energy, could be on the utility side, could be your partner. So look into that if that is an area of interest for your business when it comes to efficiency, but also emissions. Lastly, on waste, and it is very closely connected to efficiency, but also sustainability. But stuff that we've observed is breweries and businesses with alert systems, not too surprisingly, and I call this an alert system because it is letting them know if, for instance, something is off with their glycol system, if a ongoing batch is outside of the target range for temperature. Being notified at the right time means you're able to take action before the problem has grown bigger than it needs to be. And some customers will tell us that like they've struggled with lost batches. I've never been able to find any good statistics on how prevalent this problem really is, but we know it can happen from time to time. More often than losing a batch is something goes out of spec. You struggle to sell it as the product it was intended for. You need to blend it out. It can take time. It is a hassle. So having supporting technologies that allows you to know if something is wrong, call an alarm system here, is simply helpful to keep the operation going, even with people that don't go in on weekends to check how everything is running. Reducing water usage is another big one. Being more and more strictly regulated in many parts of the world, it is important that we keep fresh water consumption under control for the water to beer ratio. And an important thing that I've seen come up here as well is just having an efficient CIP process, which is one of the largest consumers of water. So having automated systems for this, reusing rinse waters are technologies that can help you reduce the amount of fresh water that goes into your production. Another is if you have pumps that allow you to track how much liquid goes from step to step in the process, it'll be quite easy for you also to do kind of liquid loss detection. Where do you see if you have leaks, where is liquid lost, and every batch can be tracked for how much makes its way from the very start into finished bottles. And the automated CIP system that we also mentioned on freshwater also goes into like just chemical usage. And you have systems now with inline conductivity sensors that can also detect the difference between the cleaning solutions and water to make sure that the cycle runs for exactly as long as is needed, but not a second more. That saves energy, it saves water, it also helps reduce the chemical usage in the process. Yeast reusability, for those of you who do yeast propagation and yeast harvesting, are probably already experts at this, but avoiding stressing the yeast more than necessary during the fermentation, ensuring proper sanitation at every stage, ensuring that you do yeast harvesting at the right time, collecting from the middle, and not letting it just sit for long. And we hear some breweries being able to reuse up to almost like 10 generations. Others will pitch fresh every time. Two benefits here, obviously. If you can pitch 10 times, you will have a lot less cost for yeast for every batch you produce. Second part is also less yeast needs to be consumed and used to produce the beer. So saving costs and saving resources. And the last one, there's quite a lot of spent grain from our production. People are finding creative usages of that for animal feed. I also see people making kind of the whole grain cookies of sorts, but looking at where do you have waste and how can we make that material be useful after the brewing process is done as well. So I will not take any more of your time today. If you made it all the way to the end here, very well done. If you have comments or questions around this, I'd love to hear from you. Efficiency, cost savings, using the resources as best we possibly can is something that's very close to my heart. So send an email with your thoughts, and have a great rest of your day.